Are you inspiring people to change the world, or are you changing the world? In today's digital age, most leaders are simply using their platform to inspire change by educating their audience on the cause and sharing doom and gloom media to create empathy. But as Katie Patrick shares in this episode, education and empathy alone will not create change. Join me and Katie Patrick for an eye-opening discussion on how to save the world. In this episode, you'll learn the most effective ways to influence your audience to create change, why sharing doom and gloom posts, videos, and photos will lead to increased freakouts and less action, why comparison can actually encourage a collaborative effort to save the world, and how getting people to put their foot in the door will lead to a bigger impact than trying to convince them to jump in head first. Katie Patrick is an Australian-American environmental engineer, designer, and author of How to Save the World, ranked as one of the top 5 books for social entrepreneurs by Forbes. She designs Fitbit for the Planet software that leverages data, game design, and behavioral psychology techniques to make real and measurable change on big environmental issues. And she is an evangelist for bringing creativity, optimism, and imagination into the craft of saving planet Earth. Katie is the creator of the Zero Waste Behavior Change game, YouTube series, and book Detrashed, and the founder of urbancanopy.io, a map-based application that uses thermal imaging of urban heat islands and vegetation cover to encourage urban greening initiatives. Katie has been a media spokesperson on environmental issues and has been featured regularly on TV, radio, and in magazines, including the BBC, Vogue Australia, and ABC. For more on Katie, check out the show notes. If you dig this podcast, please stay in the loop by signing up for my weekly emails. Sign up today at rubyfremon.com/subscribe. And finally, whether you're new to this podcast or you're a loyal thought leader, please, please, please make sure you take a moment to download a few episodes and drop a rating and review on iTunes. Now it is time to learn how to save the world with Katie Patrick. Hey, thought leaders, I am back and I have a very, very interesting guest on with us today, who's going to be speaking about something that no one has really spoken about on today's Thought Leader yet. She is the author of the book, How to Save the World, how to make changing the world the greatest game we've ever played. If you're watching this on video, you'll see me raising the book. If you're listening to this, don't worry. I'm going to have a link for this amazing book, which, by the way, looks great on a coffee table too, because it's just super awesome and fun to read. So I'm going to have the link in the show notes. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Katie Patrick to today's Thought Leader. Katie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. I am excited to dive in with you today.
Always. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to your thought leader, social impact audience about all this stuff.
Yeah. And especially now with where we are as a society, the internet is such a blessing where we can see what's happening and all over the globe, which I feel is what's creating this increased sense of empathy in people nowadays, in human beings nowadays. So with the idea of social impact, everybody's talking about it now. Everybody's wanting to bring in a cause into what they are creating. And our listeners today, they're all very cause driven. They have missions, they have purposes. This is what they are here to do. They want to create an impact on the planet. And I feel that a lot of this can become very wishy-washy in that here's the vision, here's the idea, but the execution is lacking, or it's not actually driving or creating the results that they want or creating the impact that they truly want. And you said it just before we hit record. It's like they're creating an art project versus an actual cause that is going to create an impact in our social structure. So Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and why this is actually important to you? Like, give us a little bit of just a little tidbit of your interesting story.
Uh, you're exactly right that a whole lot of people, for a start, there is this big zeitgeist out there of people wanting to make a genuine impact. I mean, it's spreading all through the world, people looking for more meaning and more purpose. And the dream of just making money or being famous, a lot of people have done that now, and they've realized that it's not fulfilling, or they've watched other people around them, perhaps, or older people around them, have the house and the yacht and whatever. It didn't really, it doesn't sort of really scratch our deep inner itch to have a meaningful life. So that's right. Everybody is trying to make impact, and they see the difficult things in the world around us, like climate change, poverty, deforestation, extinction, plastic in the ocean, and then think, I want to do something, right?
Right.
And people have worked out all around the world exactly what we need to do to solve these things. Of course, we have to stop using single-use plastics, and we have to stop cutting down the trees, and we have to install thousands of solar panels. There's every engineering solution for everything, and people know exactly what they need to do. But there is a massive gap that is in the how. Okay, you want to save a million trees, you want to install a million solar panels. That's a completely different craft, and that is the next phase of social impact, is that one of how do we actually influence people to make these change. And we find that in the behavioral psychology of influence. And there are academic people that study this. It's kind of a new realm of study and of strategy. But most of the people who are in the trenches of the day-to-day work of trying to change the world don't really critically think in an evidence-based way about how you actually make that impact on that sort of causal link, that you get up every day and that the project you're doing actually that you're actually planting the trees, that you're taking the plastic out of the ocean. And so that's where my book fits in. That's why it's called How to Save the World. It's got 100 ideas of what we need to do to save the world. Everybody's done that already. It's actually, okay, you want those to do those 100 things? The tree, the solar panel, the whatever. This is how you'll psychologically frame your project, and exactly how you'll break it. You'll break it down to have an impact. And there's this one phenomenon called the value action gap.
Can we actually just pause? Let's pause right there for a second, because I want to give a real life example that's current and it's happening right now, so that people can understand. So for example, I was on Twitter this morning because I saw somewhere on the internet, like the Amazonian forest has been on fire for 3 weeks and no one's talking about it right now on the news. And it's this ridiculous fire that can be seen from space. And the Amazon is the world's lungs. And so I started researching it on Twitter, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And all these tweets are saying, RT, like retweet this, let's raise awareness, tag, CNN and all this stuff to get them to talk about it. And I was like, this is great. And how do we, what do we need to do? What else can we do? And I feel like that's what comes up a lot of the times, is I'll see conscious leaders talking about, hey, stop using plastic, or stop doing this, or, buy electric cars and do all these things. And it's like, I get that. And maybe I don't have something to charge my car because I live in a townhouse complex where I'm renting. Maybe I don't know where to get the things that you're telling me to get. There is such a big gap in how do I do this? I don't think it's not that the desire's not there. Everyone wants to change the world. Everyone wants to impact the world. Everyone wants to do social good. But you raise such a valid point in that the gap is in the how. And who is communicating the how? We know global warming is real, or at least the people listening to this. If you don't believe it's real, you're listening to the wrong podcast.
I think I think your listeners would be cool.
Yes, I think so. And we hear people talking about this over and over and over again, and drilling to us that this is real. And how can I, as a single person, one person, contribute to bettering this or improving this or make those changes in my life? So I wanted to emphasize that for our audience, because this isn't about, like Katie said, here are a bunch of different ideas and causes you can go after. This is about the how. How can we make this tangible and real for your audience, for your community, and for you as the leader who is raising awareness for this cause?
Yeah, and it's a fascinating area to study. So what you were talking about is this, when you're getting into the how, everybody makes this mistake. And I start my book off with this, and I just love talking about it because I made it for most of my career, and then when I discovered it, I was like, oh my god, it was like a lightning bolt moment, right? It's this thing called the value action gap, which is also can be called the information deficit hypothesis. And I would recommend anyone to Google it, because it's been heavily studied. And it means that, like what you said, most people care about the planet. If you were to survey 100 people, 98 of them would be like, yeah, I really care about environmental issues, and I try to do stuff. So if you take this group of people and then you ask them what they know, for example, about plastic pollution or about climate change, you give them a little survey, see how they score and how much they care, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you care from 0 to 10? Then you put them through, maybe you get them to watch a documentary, you give them a lecture, you teach them all about climate change, you teach them all about the animals that get plastic stuck in them, you give them a whole lot of information, and then you measure them at the end. They will care more, they will really care, and they will know a lot. When you track their behavior for the next 6 months, they will not have done anything. And it's not because they didn't care, and it's not because they didn't know about it. It's because the process to get people to do an action, if you're getting a school to actually put in a vegetable garden, or a person to put a solar panel on their roof, and this has been studied a lot in getting people to quit smoking, and in getting people to eat more vegetables, which most people have come into contact with, and smoking something that's very easy to understand as well. You can get someone to watch a 2-hour documentary about how bad smoking is, and they'll still smoke, right? But if you get somebody, just say, for example, one of the ways to get around this value action gap is asking people to just write down a promise. If I was smoking and I wrote down a promise, dear Ruby, I promise to quit smoking for a week, I would be far more likely to actually do it. And I don't really need to watch the documentary because I kind of already know about it. So when most people working on social impact and they see things like the Amazon burning, let's like tell everybody about it.
Right.
Not that it's bad for people to know about it. Obviously, we want people to know about it. But just to understand that if your project and your business model for social change is all about just getting people to know about it, you're working on a documentary or a YouTube channel, or you're writing a book, or maybe you go and give talks at schools, whatever it is, that it's quite likely that if you're not adding the behavioral psychology bit onto that, the actual bit that drives the change, you might as well not be doing it at all. Like, it won't actually be having an impact. And this phenomenon is everywhere. Most people, I talk about this all the time. I give talks at workshops. I've written a book about it, and very few people, maybe 1 in every 20 or 1 in every 50 people, and I'm talking about people who work in government, people who work in not-for-profits, it's their job. They just don't know about this behavioral phenomenon. So once you realize that education and getting people to experience empathy and concern is not going to drive action, then you are in the space of, well, how do I actually drive the action? How do I just get the person to do the thing? And that becomes a process of just looking at a human being and saying, well, how do I get the actual person to do the thing? And there are a bunch of things that you can do that will work, that are easy, anybody can do, but most of us just don't know what they are.
Right. And so what you're saying is education and empathy doesn't drive action.
Yeah, it just drives education and empathy. You're like, for example, how many people are out there? Like, I think my mom is like this, really concerned about climate change, great deal of empathy for animals and suffering. But they're still driving the car that's like the polluting car. They're still buying a whole lot of plastic, crap from the $2 store, from the, that are imported. They're not donating to any charities. They're not doing anything different in their job. They're really experiencing a lot of awareness. Maybe they're consuming a lot of documentaries and information, but the actually sort of grabbing the action and just doing it is not happening, which is what basically happens for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if you are a conscious leader, to our listeners, and you're using your platform to educate and to create empathy for the causes that you believe in, what you need to understand, that Katie's explaining, is that this isn't going to drive people to action. it might create a ripple effect of more education and more empathy. But all these people who are listening and also perhaps educating now because of you, and sharing, trying to increase empathy around this cause because of you, all of this combined effort isn't really going to drive the actions that need to take place in order to truly support this cause. So if education and empathy aren't the two things that are going to help drive action, which is what we're seeing everywhere, especially on social media, like people just using their platforms, broadcasting their messages. And FYI, I do this. So I am genuinely curious to know, okay, well then how do we then drive the actual action that we want to see take place?
Yeah, well, the education and the empathy is not it's not a bad thing. It does
Right.
prime people. So when there have been studies that show that if they watch the documentary about the whales, they're in a open state to
Yeah.
receive the action. So it's not that we shouldn't be doing it. It's that you're kind of missing the you're only doing the first step, right?
Right.
Uh, well, what I do is break down. What I teach in the book is breaking your issue first down into the two lenses of measurement and behavior change. The first lens is, are you measuring the thing that you want to change? If you actually want to get people to use less plastic, you should be somehow getting a measurement of how much plastic they're using, or their carbon impact of their household, or their car, what sort of car, the fuel efficiency of their car. So you really want to dive into the numbers first. And you can have a fairly miraculous effect by just putting the numbers on the wall. There's this one little lesson in the book, or exercise, to just write the number on the wall really big. So for example, if you were working with maybe you're working with a school, like you have children in your school, or you're a teacher or something to do with schools, you could put like a big poster on the wall that said, how many calories worth of, or maybe calories is hard to work out, maybe in pounds, how many pounds of produce our school grows. You might have a little vegetable garden. And maybe you get, I've done hopeless vegetable gardens before where you get like one potato and a lettuce a year. You start off small and you're like, okay, we get like 1 pound a year, right? Well, how do we get this up? Just putting the numbers out there for people to see is remarkable. And there's 2 case studies that show that if you just look at the amount of paper people are recycling, if you just put a number on front of it, and you're using a technology, you can just do it by hand, right? You just write, this is how much paper is going in the bin, kind of like a Fitbit. A Fitbit
Right.
would do it electronically for your wrist, but we're trying to bring that concept of that, showing people numbers in a feedback loop. Another one for cans. This is how many cans have been. Those numbers shot up to 60 or 70% more people doing better at sorting, putting it in the right bin, just by showing the numbers. So that's like the first thing. That's just like, have you measured it? Are you showing it? And you don't need to make a 2-hour documentary. You can just show the numbers,
Right.
and that will naturally have an effect. And then you can sort of track the numbers. Then there's a way of just updating it using the reward system of the brain. And this concept of the reward system is really, it's a really important thing to understand. And it's fun as well. That a lot of people go about things with the doom psychology of just kind of like scare people, like this horrible thing is happening, we have to do something. So what that does is, like, anytime you experience a fear, or just something scary, you move into that fight or flight part of the brain.
Right.
The energy of your brain sort of shuts down your cerebral cortex that does executive thinking. The more blood flow goes to the amygdala. You release more cortisol, you become in a tense state, and the opportunity for complex creative thought sort of shuts down. So that's what you're doing to people when you're like doom and gloom. When we look at the reward center of the brain, it's like, say, for example, if you recycle more, how can I give you a smiley face? How can I compliment you and be like, great job? Like a Fitbit. We did this. Facebook notifications do this with the red dot. The red
Right.
dot and the likes are that kind of the way Facebook does it.
Dopamine hits.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does create dopamine, but in the context of trying to encourage more positive behaviors, like, are you growing more food?
Right.
Let's put the amount of pounds of food our school is growing on the wall, and then every time we get that up, every month we get a bit more of a harvest, we put up a giant smiley face and a digital strawberry text message to everybody. I mean, we love getting positive feedback, which can just be a compliment, a little award, a digital insignia somehow. you get a friendly emoji for something. So the measurement enables you to track that your cause is doing better, and then to give people this positive feedback, right? And then they want more positive feedback. They're like, oh, I got a smiley face for growing more vegetables. We're going to go double the vegetables, you know? So that's, see how it's driving action instead of getting people to watch documentaries about why they should grow vegetables.
Right.
That's
So
just the basic framework to start with. I mean, there's a lot
yeah.
more. I can keep going.
Yeah. And I love this because yes, people love the positive feedback, and they also love recognition, being recognized for doing something good. And one of the things that I can think of, because I'm wanting to bring this back into the conscious leaders, and I'm thinking about how, you know, our listeners are supporting probably other causes. For example, one of the things that I always see pop up in my feed from conscious leaders is this whole idea of, you know, stop using plastic straws and, you know, save the oceans. Cool. So what if we then turned into, what if I went on my social media feed then and said, hey, I want to see pictures of your new glass straws. Here's a link where to buy them. Post the picture, tag me, let me know, and I'll give you a shout out. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Like, would that be something where that could actually create this positive feedback loop?
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that's a good, that's a great idea. And some things are a little bit hard to measure,
Yeah.
like plastic straws. So you don't always have the ability to measure, but there's still lots of stuff that you can do. And so the reason why that's a good idea is because it's focusing on the action, and it's
Mm-hmm.
using this concept of social norms and social imitation that a lot of people will want to, if they want to get people to stop using plastic straws, they'll show a picture of plastic everywhere, plastic pollution,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is, it's good to have a little bit of that so you know there's a problem, but what you ultimately want to show is this is me doing the action. So sometimes people criticize this and they're like, oh, they're just putting it on social media. You've got to think of it that humans naturally imitate each other. So if you want to get a person to do a thing, you want to show a person doing the thing that people will copy. So you want to show someone, you know, preferably who's kind of attractive or desirable in some way, someone you would like to be like a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
um, and you're super photogenic, Ruby, so you should do this. You should photograph yourself with the glass straw a lot and put it out there, and people will be like, oh, I want to be like her, you know. And then people will copy that and they'll be like, oh, I want to be like that person, and then they'll copy. We can't help but copy people. We're copying everyone around us all the time, even if we're trying not to. We can't help
Right.
always mirror people, and then that can be amplified through
Right.
social media. And there's another thing that just is a really easy thing that you can wrap into that is like a behavior chart. I have a little mock-up of one in the book, which is just a 30-day plastic-free challenge, and you can make a PDF.
Mm-hmm.
I think I meant to put this on my site as a download, but I have not. I probably should. But anyone can make one up in Canva. You know, you have them like a little kid, you know, which is
Yeah.
like, oh, like I rode my bike or brushed my
Right.
teeth,
And you
you
put the little
know.
stickers on.
Yeah, I guess they could make a grown-up version of that. It's like do a 30-day plastic-free challenge. So you're actually asking people to monitor their project, give them a sticker, get a little whale sticker every day for 30 days. You know, they photograph themselves maybe every day for 30 days. And so you're sort of training people to engage in this behavior. Maybe they have to photograph their 30-day sticker chart at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like sharing it. So they're creating this kind of like tribal identity around it. And if you do that, you will make measurable change. Change will happen way more than if you just create a movie night and get people to come and talk about it that probably
Right.
may not achieve anything. So it's just these sort of slight variations to your project that can really create change instead of just sort of living in the fantasy of hoping you are and not doing it.
Right. It's like the idea of inspiring change versus actually creating change. Like, I
Uh,
think there's a lot of people who inspire it. Um, but to actually take that next step to support your audience in creating the actual change through action, that's what will really help you create the impact that you really want to create.
Yeah, and your idea of, you know, photographing the action is really great. You know, and you can match that with a pledge as well. Like you can put these things all together, sort of like a jigsaw. If you were to
Right.
start, let's say, call it the 30-day plastic-free or straw challenge. You could start off with a pledge where you just ask people to write down, I commit to using no plastic for 30 days. And then they photograph it, they put it on social media, and then they'll feel like really beholden to that, like in a way that no amount of learning can create the kind of emotional traction of that pledge. So you put the pledge together with the behavior chart, the sticker chart, with the photographs on social media, and then you've got, I mean, you literally have however many people join, a multiple of however many, maybe they take out 5 or 10 pounds of plastic each, multiplied by how many people. Real change happening. And then all the people that they know and their friends will see that. And then their friends will see it. And that's how social movements happen, is through humans copying other humans.
I love that. And I love that you used the term social movement, because I think a lot of people are really wanting to create these movements, but the movements don't move. They don't really move. And so it's important for our listeners to understand that the measurement piece is really important. And really finding ways to support like this feedback loop that gets people into action, gives them the recognition that they are looking for, has them feel part of a community, or a group of people who are all doing it, because like you said, like we naturally just want to be like each other and copy each other. So these are all really great tips to support our listeners in creating an actual movement that moves. What else can they do to create a real movement around the cause that is super important to them, that'll take them from just education and empathy into driving action? Because there is that, what you said earlier about you can share pictures of plastic in the seas, and we see that and it's so depressing. Like I look at these things and I want to cry, and then I kind of feel like, okay, now what? And I think one of the things that most people say is, I feel helpless to this. Like I feel helpless. What do I do? And I think the natural inclination is to share, look at this devastation that's happening in our world. Look at these traumatizing photos. I feel like we're naturally inclined to share that because we want people to feel bad, because we think that that's what's going to drive the action. But it's that will inspire them to be more aware of what's going on, but that may not necessarily just drive the action. So what are some other ways for them to inspire their audience to actually take action towards supporting this cause that they believe in?
Well, there's another thing that's very powerfully motivating to people, which is connected to the measurement, which is just comparing people against each other on a single measurable data point. So if you could look at, maybe you could get some data of the amount of trash or plastic used, say block by block or city by city, or, I think schools are a great place to work as well. That you can, if you could show, say there were 10 schools in a particular neighborhood, right? And then you worked out how much trash they made or how much electricity they used per school, and then divided it by student. And then you could put out a chart. You could make a leaderboard of all the schools in a row, right? From best to worst. Not with the idea of shaming, but just with the idea of just disclosing the information, just making it open and using it to enable change, right? So this idea of comparing one thing against another drives people crazy. Like, they, like the person who's second is going to be like, I want to get to first,
Right.
We're just so naturally comparative in how we compare. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like if you're looking at two different apples to buy at a store, it's so just deeply in our cognitive process to be able to be like, well, that's the better apple, right? So we just so naturally are always comparing everybody. So the company that did this was a company called O-Power, which sends you a little chart in your electricity bill, which compares how much electricity you use compared to your neighbors. And that was so effective. They built into this substantial company that sold to Oracle for $500 million because it works, right?
Wow.
This thing. So this phenomenon of just comparing one person to another, this is why sports do it. It's done everywhere except in the environmental and social change movement.
Right.
So just figure out a way that you can bring that in. If you can basically be like, this is how your city compares to that city, that building compares to that group compares to that, the school, maybe all the schools in an area, all the streets. Maybe you could hold a like a block party, and it could be all the households in your block, and everyone's kind of like getting into this and being like, okay, let's put our data out there for, you know, energy or water or whatever it is, and let's create a leaderboard of everybody on our block and just make it fun, make it like a party. And it doesn't put people into this nasty competitive state. It puts people into a collaborative state because the numbers are out there and everybody wants their numbers to go up. So what you find is it encourages people to collaborate to improve their numbers and gives them that sort of agency. So ways that you can compare people against each other, getting people to, you know, imitate, you know, to copy another person. Also, you know, the reward center of the brain, complimenting people, positive feedback. Just think of it, if you go through it with the lens of how can I give people positive feedback for what they're doing, the reward center, people want it like a cookie, you know, they want it for what they did, you know, take you out of that helpless state. How do we, you know, enable action? And there's another one called foot in the door technique, which has a super interesting case study it was done actually in the 70s, I think. But they got one group of houses and put and asked them if they would put a giant sign that said, please drive slower in the yard.
Right.
And most of the households said no because the sign was so big. So they went to a very similar nearby neighborhood and asked them to put a little sign. And most of them, over 90%, said, yeah, sure, I'll put a little sign in. They went back 3 months later, and some staggering amount, something like 76% of the households that agreed to the little sign then agreed to the big sign. So it's understanding that you want to get people to commit to the tiniest little bite of the cookie of whatever you're asking them to do. Like a lot of people won't go vegan straight away.
Right.
I think people who are vegan, who probably think they went vegan straight away, probably didn't. They probably actually had many little foot in the door techniques over years until they actually made the commitment to go vegan. So you're asking people, you know, would you like to try not even a whole vegan burger, just one bite? Try one bite of a vegan burger. That would be like a foot in the door, and then maybe they'll get you sort of take them on the journey. So figuring out what is the smallest pledge, the smallest commitment I can ask somebody to do, and to write it down. And that small movement, that small pledge doesn't mean that you are diluting your movement. It's a priming technique for them to commit to bigger changes. And that's proven over and over again. The sign one was the first one study, but they just keep going. It's very easily repeatable. And it's intuitively understanding. If you had to ask for someone something big, you'd be like, can I have $100,000 or a new car or whatever? You'll be like, hi, just wondering if we could chat about something. So then they agree. That's the foot in the door. Yeah, okay, we'll chat. What do you want to chat about? I'm about to ask you for something. Okay, you know, like sort of like a ramping up to the big, to the big question. And visual ways of show people a progress bar. You're trying to get from A to B, you know, get someone to exercise more, smoke less, eat more vegetables, clean up trash, measure where you are, measure where you want to go, track people along the progress bar. And that the progress bar is the antidote to what you mentioned about feeling disempowered, about people being like, what do I do? Like, well, get the progress bar along, guys. You know, if you want to get this much trash out of the ocean, put a number on it and then decide how much you want to get out every week and start working on it. And then you'll be able to sort of see the numbers change. And I think when you see measurable change, it's very exciting. It's very exciting for anyone. You know, you actually see real change happen as opposed to the fantasy of maybe change. It's super exciting when you see a vegetable garden that is there, that was not there, that you helped happen. I mean, I once, a long time ago, I think it was in my early 20s, I just hooked up a couple of people that I really did very little. I just sort of introduced two people. And then within a month, they made a farmer's market that wasn't there. You know, and they forever thanked me for kind of like sort of founding this farmer's market. I hardly did anything. Like, it was like nothing. But they just wouldn't, both of them had really wanted it to happen for ages, and it didn't happen. And I just so then I saw the farmer's market every day there for the next few years, not every day, once a week for the next few years. And it was just so rewarding to see this thing that I kind of felt like probably wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have contributed to it in some way, even though what I did was very small. But there's just something so rewarding about real change.
Yeah,
So
we want to know, like,
You know, that's going to
Right.
make people not feel empowered. Feeling disempowered is what happens when you're not making change. When you are making change, then you feel really empowered. And there's a lot of us that actually do feel very empowered.
Right. Because we want to know where our contributions are going, or we want to know how our actions are contributing to the overall cause. This was like one of the very reasons why any charity that I give back to isn't like this giant organization or conglomerate, because you don't know where the money's going necessarily. They don't usually display everything. I love working with the smaller grassroots that have the beautiful charts, and they show us this is going to get you is going to get this, and this donation is going to get this, and they have the charts on their website that go up every month. And um, it's like I feel better when I know that what I'm doing is actually creating this impact, and by them visually representing it, it makes me feel good, which hits my reward center. And then I'm like, okay, I want to keep giving to you because I know what's happening. I mean, this is like real life. This is what I experience because I give back to an organization locally that's called SPY, Safe Place for Youth, but I know where the money's going and I know what the donations get. And that feels very rewarding to me. To be able to see them to see them evolve and grow from the contributions or from just my presence and the impact that happens while I'm on site. So I love this. I love that we're talking about how comparison actually works and how the visual, showing people visual representations of what their impact is creating on the overall impact, creating these feedback loops, the foot in the door. I love that because it is true. When I started eating whole foods, it didn't just start like, oh, I'm all of a sudden off of Mr. Noodles and canned goods and just straight on vegetables and fruits. Like that was a real transition for me. And it started small, and now like I barely ever eat canned goods, if anything, or boxed foods. And this is what we do in our diets, and it can definitely apply to, you want to save the oceans from plastic? Cool. What's one thing? Like, what's one thing that you're going to commit to? Um, Everyone take a picture. Show me your new glass straws. Post that. Use the hashtag. Create the movement around it, and then continue from there. So I love that one. Um, And I love what you said about the progress bar, because I never thought about this. You said the progress bar acts like an antidote to feeling helpless. And as you were sharing that, I was thinking to myself, I always love seeing a progress bar.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down. That I didn't realize I said
Oh
that.
yeah,
So
you said
I'm going to
that.
I'm going to quote
Yeah,
myself on like
quote
social
yourself. The
media or
progress, you said
something.
the progress bar is
No,
the
I love the
antidote to
progress bar. I'm
feeling
a huge fan of the
helpless. But
progress
it's true, because even if you donate online to something
bar.
and you see the little bar go up,
Mm-hmm.
it feels great
Yeah.
to be able to see, wow, there's my impact. Um, so these are all super powerful tips that people can begin, like listeners, you can start to implement these things right now. You can start to do these things right now. And then if you want to take it to the next step, I highly, highly recommend that you get this book, which is on Kickstarter
Oh,
currently.
Indiegogo. Indiegogo.
Indiegogo, sorry.
Yeah.
It's not Kickstarter, it's Indiegogo,
But if
everyone.
you Google Kickstarter, nothing will come up. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm going to put the link in the show notes. And like I said, it's a beautiful book for those of you watching the video. It's like got full of images and quotes and amazing graphics that make it really easy for you to actually save the world versus just inspire to save the world. Katie, we are at the end of the episode. Do you have any like final thoughts that you want to share with our listeners?
Just that, changing the world should be a creative adventure. It shouldn't be a doom and gloom fight. I'm just like really into like just encouraging people to get into their creative, what I call your creative genius zone, that, bring your creative genius zone and your mission to change the world are the same thing. Like, it's not like you do like paintings over here and then you like fight the evil monster over here. When you dig into your creative self and find your highest purpose, and that is usually doing something very good in the world. I've never met anyone whose highest purpose was to do evil. They usually, you dig into it, you come up with quite a substantial altruistic purpose the more you dig into your own creativity. And I really want to change the conversation away from like doom and fighting horrible things and bring it to, how can we be our best creative selves and create a beautiful world with our own creative intentions, and to bring that super positive, optimistic imagination space around social change and inspire that kind of thing. So I just want to encourage people to think in that way. And if they want to read, I've written 2 chapters on it in the book. I feel so strongly about it. If they wanted to read those chapters, I feel very strongly, very passionate about encouraging people to get into that headspace and to leave the doom space behind.
Yeah. I think we have enough doom and gloom in our real life, and to really inspire the change. I love that you said getting the term creative adventure, because it's like what you talk about in the book. Like, we can gamify the whole thing. We can make it fun. We can make it feel light. We can make it feel like something we actually want to be part of, because doom and gloom, we don't necessarily want to be a part of that. That can make us feel like a little, it's like shocked and doesn't really draw us in. It makes us feel more upset or sad or helpless, versus like, here's something you can be a part of. Very, very different energy.
And when you think it's fun, that'll resonate through the project, like you have to be, as the social change agent, be in the fun, positive space yourself. And then you'll create that resonant energy, and people will want to be a part of it. Like I gave my book to a girl at she was a receptionist. That's kind of mean when I said just a receptionist. She was a receptionist. And I was just chatting to her, so what have you been up to? And I gave it to her, and she says, "I feel really good when I hold this book. I just feel good when I look at it, And I think that I went with the book with the intention to create something that was really inspiring, that was really positive. So my kind of positive energy got put into that. Whereas if you're going with the intention of like, I want to freak everybody out about this horrible thing that's happening in the world, then you'll get everybody freaked out, and then you'll all be freaking out together.
Right.
You've got to get yourself into that fun energy state so you can create really resonant projects that people are going to fall in love with.
Definitely. Love that. Make it fun. Don't freak people out.
That's right. Tagline, simple, baseline. Yeah,
exactly. Katie, how can people stalk you online? And I will also have these links in the show notes.
Hey, thank you. My website is a great place to start, katiepatrick.com, spelled Katie. I have a whole bunch of free downloads you can get, and I send I email free PowerPoints, tutorials when I get inspired to make stuff that can help. So I definitely recommend people signing up to my website. There's also links there to get the book on Amazon or Indiegogo, and I post a lot of stuff to Twitter too, just at Katie Patrick. Ideas, inspiring tidbits, and I keep it really positive. It's all about trying to make the world an amazing place. So I try and tweet every day something that is motivating or uplifting, or like a picture of an eco city or a cool design, to try and get this positive headspace there. So I would say those 2 things.
Awesome. Okay, so listeners, I will have those links and more in the show notes. Katie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on today's episode. I really appreciate you. Thank you for sending me the book. I love it. I am urging all of the conscious leaders listening to this to get their own copy. Trust me, it's beautiful. It's got a lot of different tools for you to integrate into the work that you're already doing. So Katie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It was really fun.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining Katie and I on today's Thought Leader, where we are challenging you to rise up, speak up, and create a movement. If you dig this episode between me and Katie, please do share it with a friend, tag a few friends, and make sure you drop a rating and review on iTunes. If you have any questions or you want to share your biggest insight from this episode, please don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or Katie and fill us in. My handle on Twitter, Instagram, and all the other social media networks is I am Ruby. Thank you again, and I will see you here on Thursday for a brand new episode of today's Thought Leader.